Hi, I'm Alex Jordan from Learn Color Grading and FilmSimplified.com. Have you ever found the nodes to be confusing? In this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of nodes in DaVinci Resolve. Even if you use nodes comfortably, I think you will find something to learn in this video, hopefully. But before we start, we are currently working on improving both the Film Simplified platform and the Learn Color Grading channel. If you would like to help, there is a link to a survey in the description. If you fill the survey, this will help us produce content that will suit you better and introduce products that will make your workflow easier. We will also be selecting 3 of the participants to get a one-on-one session with me where I help them with color grading and refining their workflows. I'm not going to bore you more. Now let's jump right in. This masterclass will start from the basics, so if you are an expert, please bear with us. As I said, we're starting from the absolute basics. The first thing you need to know about nodes in Resolve is that the node graph is not a single space. So you have this selector at the top here, and you have this drop down. Currently, it's on clip. However, I can switch to timeline, and this is the timeline space. So we have 2 separate spaces, timeline and clip. It's pretty self-explanatory. All the nodes that I add in the clip space will affect the currently selected clip. So if I move to this clip, this node controls this clip only, and it doesn't control any other clips. However, if I switch to the timeline space, all the nodes that I add here, so color, nodes, add a serial node, and this node here will control all the clips on the timeline. So for example, if I make the image really red, notice that now all the clips on the timeline look red. Let's reset. And if I switch to the clip space and make the image really red, or orange in this case, the changes only affected this particular clip without affecting any of the other clips. But that's not all. There is also a space for groups. So for example, if I select 3 clips here, so all these clips, right click, and I select add into a new group and just keep the name to group 1. Now all these clips are part of a single group. You can tell from the icons on the bottom of the clips. Notice these icons here. But because now we are on a clip that is a part of a group, note that we have 2 new spaces. There is group pre-clip and group post-clip. It's pretty simple. Group pre-clip, all the nodes that are added here will affect the clips in this group before the nodes of the group themselves. So it's pretty simple. This is a node group that controls the clip. Okay, and then you have another node group that controls the timeline. So you can add nodes here and you can add nodes here. Let me just draw this in a better way. Please mind my drawing. So basically the image flows in this direction. So if you have an image, these nodes will be applied first before these nodes are applied second. Great. Now, when a clip is a part of a group, 2 new spaces are added. So this is a space and this is a different space. This is the pre-clip and this is the post-clip. Oh, they're both PCs, but you know what I'm trying to say. So this is pre-clip and post-clip. So all the nodes that you add to this group will be applied to the image first because it will be the first thing to be added to the image or applied to the image before the clip nodes are applied to the image. Then the post-clip nodes are going to be applied to the image, mind my drawing, and then the timeline clips are going to be applied to the image. So notice that this only happens if the clip is a part of a group. And this is how it works in a very simple way. So notice these icons here. You have group pre-clip, clip, group post-clip, and timeline. So now you know about groups. Let's now move to a clip that is not a part of any group. This one, for example, and we have only 2 spaces. So the clip and the timeline. So great. Basically, these are the spaces where you can add nodes. But what is a node? In a very simple term, a node is a color processor. It takes an input, it takes an image, change it in one way or another before passing it to the next node. So note this point here. This is where the image originates. So this is the original image before any effects are applied to it. The image is being sent to this node before this node processes the image in one way or another. Then it sends it to this point, which represents the output, and the output simply is what is being displayed on the monitor. So there is a journey that the image goes through. And in this journey, you can enable or disable nodes. So for example, let's add a new node. I'm just hitting Option and S. And let's say that this node changes the image in one way or another, so it makes the image red. I can disable this node, so it remains in the path of the image, but it's disabled. I can do that by simply clicking on the number of the node. So this is node 1, this is node 2. If I click on the number, now this node is disabled, and I can enable it the same way by clicking on the number one more time. Now, let's reset and take a closer look at a node. I'm simply going to move the node here, and using this slider, I'm going to zoom in. Now, note that each node has inputs and outputs. So the input simply receives the image, then the node processes the image, and the output of the node sends it to the next node. Pretty simple. Note also that the same image can be sent to multiple nodes. So for example, I'm going to add a new node, right click, add node corrector. Great, now we have a node here, add another node corrector. We're going to get into all of these nodes in a bit, but I have two nodes here, and now I'm going to select this line that connects this node to the output, delete the line, and now I need to send the image from this node to this node. I can do that using the green connector. So the green connector simply sends the image from one node to the next. So I'm going to click on this selector and link it to the input of this node. So now we have one connector. However, note that we can perform the same operation one more time. So I can click again on the same green output and drag a line to the input of this node also. And now, if we move this here, note that now we're sending the image from this node to this node, and at the same time, we're sending the same image to this node also. But note something very important now. The output does not have anything connected to it, so we're currently not performing any operations on the image. In order to get the image to the output, I'm going now to be linking this output to the end point. So I connected it. However, notice something very important. If I now drag another output from this node to the output, to the main output, notice that only one connector or one image can reach this final output. So that's where certain types of nodes that combines the image come in a bit, but this is basically how you link nodes. So that was the green connector. What is the blue connector? Before we get into the blue connector, I'm going to do something. Let's reset. Let's move this here and take a look at the image inside the node. I'm going to apply a mask by simply clicking on one of the windows here. And now I have a window, and note that, let me just make this more clear. And note now that we do not see the entire image inside the node. We can only see the areas that are inside this circle or this oval. This simply means that this node will only control the areas that are actually selected, so the area is visible, and will not affect any of the other pixels in the image. So only the pixels inside the selection. So for example, if I drag this connector and make the area inside the image red, note that this did not affect the entire image because this node is only affecting the areas inside the selection. So the areas in gray here in the node are not affected. Why is that important? Well, let's reset here and add a new node. I'll right click, add a corrector, and now I will remove this connection, link this node to this node, and note that the second node have all the pixels in the image, so it received the entire image and not only the parts that are inside the selection. So we have the entire image visible. This means that whatever I do here will affect the entire image. Great. Let's reset. Now, as you can guess, the blue connector sends not the image. It does not send the image, but it sends the masking information, or what to affect and what not to affect from the node before it. So basically, if I connect this here, note that now both have the same area selected. That's because the first arrow here, so the green one, sent the image itself, and the second one sent the mask information. Now, why would you want to do that? There are many reasons for that. But in the simplest form, note that now if I change the mask in the first image, in the first node, sorry, it controls the, it changes the selection in the second node. And this simply means that I can select the second node and simply make it select everything that is not being selected in the node before it. This simply means that if I change the selection here, note that, let me just make this more clear. This node is selecting this area, and this node is selecting everything but this area. So it's affecting all the pixels that are not included in the node before it, and there are many uses for that. So let's reset. Let me just move this here. It's going to be a bit easier. Great. Speaking of Resolve, if you're a beginner and you're interested in learning how to use Resolve, you'll love our free crash course that will teach you the basics of every tab in Resolve. Simply go to filmsimplified.com and sign up for free. Now, there are two different ways to add nodes. You can add nodes manually by right-clicking in the nodes area, going to add nodes, and select one of the nodes that you want to add. So you have corrector, parallel layer, key splitter, and combiner. However, there are presets in Resolve. So for example, if I go to color, nodes, as I'm sure you know, there are many presets here that basically uses these nodes and combine them in different ways. However, we're going to be taking a look at the nodes themselves here to understand what each node does. So the first node is the corrector, which is basically a standard node. It simply takes the image input, applies all the changes that you change down here. So whatever I do here, all the color changes I do here, all the color changes I do to curves, and all the controls are basically going to be applied to this node. So the node is going to take the original image as it received it from the node before it, perform all these changes to the image, and send it to the node after it, or to output. So it's basically the basic node. Let's delete it. The next type of node, I'll right click, add a node, and the next one is parallel mixer. I'll click here to add a parallel mixer node, and note that it looks a bit weird. What is the parallel mixer? Well, the parallel mixer helps solve a very simple problem. Let's say that you have an image that you sent to node A that changed the image in one way or another. Now, the second node will need to, if it sends the image to the node right out, you know what, let me draw. So let's say here that you have a node. So this is node A, okay, and node A changed the image in a certain way. It applied certain changes to the image. Now, then you send the image to node B that applied a different kind of changes. Okay, now let's say that you want to send the image to node C now, for example, for more changes. However, node C does not need to take whatever the output was from B. So node C does not need to see the image the way B sent it to it, because B sends the image with its own effects. Node C wants to take the image from node A, so it does not want to take it from node B. So let's say that you need to repeat this many times, where a single source, so this particular image, need to send the same source image to all the nodes that come after it. That's where parallel mixer comes in. So I'll re-explain this because I know it's a bit confusing. So for example, let's take this image here. I'll just, correct it a bit. Whatever, let's just correct this really fast, add a bit of saturation, and great. Okay, so now I'm going to send this to a node after it. So I'm just going to hit Control and S, or like Option S, to add a new node. And now in this node, so the second node, I'm going to make the image green. Great. So now if I add one more node, now I'm running into some trouble. Why? Let's say that I want to select the red parts, so the red areas, so the book from this image. And in this node, I want to select the color red. However, note that the node before it made the image green. So now I cannot select the color red easily because there is no red in the image. It's all green. To do that, I need to be able to send the same image to multiple nodes at the same time. And that's pretty simple to do. I'll reset, bring this here, and now I'm going to add a node, a corrector node, and maybe a third time add a corrector node. Great. And now, as we learned from a bit earlier, we can send the same image to all of these nodes at the same time. So we have 3 copies of the same node. However, now we're going to run into trouble because, as we discussed earlier, if we link the output from this node to the output of the node area, yes, we can do it for one, but once we connect the second one, the first one is going to be disconnected. So you can only connect one here. So the solution, as you might have guessed, is to right-click, add node, and select parallel mixer. And the parallel mixer will accept all of these nodes and combine them into one image. So I'm going to drag this here, drag this here. So we have 2 inputs, but now we only have 2 inputs. And how are we going to add this one? Well, it's pretty simple. If you drag the output from this node, a new input is going to be added automatically, and you can connect this one to the output. So it just combined all the images. This means that, for example, let's just change the colors of the original one, increase saturation. This means that in this node, I can select red, for example. I'm just going to do this really fast. So note that we have red selected. In this one, we're going to, for example, be selecting blue. So only blue is selected, and maybe let's pick another color here. Whatever, I'm just going to pick this, for example. So note that now all of these nodes are getting their data, the main data they're using from the first node. So this is being keyed directly from this node, this is being keyed directly from here, and this one also. However, if I applied them in sequentially, what will happen, like one after another, what will happen is this one will not find any blue information to key because the one right before it, if we connected them sequentially. So So we connected like this one, then 2, 3, 4, for example, which is not the case here. But if we did that, then node number 3 will not have any blue information to key because there was no information or blue information sent from the node before it. So the parallel mixer simply allows us to combine all these images into one image. Let's reset. And again, so I'm zoomed in because I want to make this a bit more clear for you. Maybe I can move this to the left a bit, and let's hide the clips. Yeah, much better. Okay, so let's right click, go to add node, and the next one is layer mixer. So what's layer mixer? It's very simple. It mimics layers. So you have the image from node A and image from node B. Instead of just mixing them in a very simple way, it puts them on top of one another, just like in a layer system. Imagine if you physically got node A and physically laid it on top of node B. That's basically what you're doing, and you have a simple layer system. This looked weird, but anyway, so let's make this more clear. I will add a new node, so I'll right click, add node corrector, and I'm going to drag the image here. So now we have the same source image going into 2 different nodes. And now I want to overlay one on top of the other, just as if they're layers. And that's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to drag this one here, and I'm going to drag this one here, and it's just like a layer system, and that's great. However, there's one more problem. If this is a layer system, which of these is the layer on top? Note that this node has 2 inputs. So this is an input and this is another input. Weirdly enough, the input at the bottom is actually the image on top. And to prove that, I'm going to select this image, make it really red, and we can see the changes. Because if this was a layer system, then this would be the layer on top, and it will be the visible layer. However, let's reset. Now select this node, which is, if it was a layer system, this would be the one at the bottom, and change its colors, and we cannot see any changes in the image. It's pretty simple because this is the layer at the bottom, not the layer at the top. And this node has very unique properties. If you right click on it, you have an option here to select the composite mode, just like in a layer system. So for example, I can select, for example, overlay, and you would get the same exact effects as if you added 2 layers layers on top of one another in a layer system, and you change the blend mode between these two layers. And here you have all the standard blend modes from darken to hue, lighten, like all the standard blending modes. Let's reset. Again, let's move this node here. By the way, if the node structure is messed up, you can right click and select clean node graph, and it will just reset the view for the node area. Next, let's right click, go to add node, and take a look at the key mixer. And this is the key mixer node. But what does it do? Well, it simply mixes the keys from two separate nodes. So for example, I have this node here. I'm going to add a key. For example, let's make a circle. Actually, just make this more clear. So here you have a circle, and it's pretty clear here when you look at the node what's being selected and what's not. And let's just add another node, like a corrector node, send the image to this corrector node, and here I'm going to add a rectangle. So you have two separate, so this node has a key and this node has a separate key, and now we need to combine both keys and send them to another node. So I'll add a corrector. I know this is pretty slow, but I don't want to use any of the presets. I'm just trying to use like row nodes just to make things more clear. I'm going to send the image here and I'm going to pass it to the output. Great. Now we have this key here and this key here, so two different selections. It's pretty simple. Instead of sending this one to the node so it will have the circular key, or sending this one, what I can do is basically to send both keys to this node that will combine them before sending them to this node. So I'll drag this one here, I'll drag this one here, and now I have both keys combined, and I'll send it to the final node. And note that the final one has both the circular key and the rectangular key, because we basically combine them both in the key combiner before sending the final combined key to this node. Now let's reset, right click, clean up node graph, zoom in one more time. Okay, this is getting, because I'm not using the trackpad, I'm using a pen, so panning is not as simple. So now let's right click, go to add node, and finally we have the splitter and the combiner nodes. So these are pretty simple. They will split something and then combine it one more time. But what are they splitting and combining exactly? The channels. So as you might have, I'm sure you know, the image is basically a combination of three channels, red, green, and blue, that holds red and green and blue values, and each node controls all the channels. So it controls red, green, and blue, and this is a way to split these channels and create three nodes where each of the node controls one of the channels. But before we take a look at that, it's very important to know that if you right click on a node, there's an option here for channels. Channel 1, 2, and 3. Now, in 99.9% of the cases, this is going to be red, green, and blue, but note that this is not always the case. But if you're watching this video and you're just starting, it's always going to be red, green, and blue. So for example, in this node, if I disable channel 2, and then right click again, and then right click again, go to channels and disable channel 3. Now this node, let's right click, go to channels, it's only channel 1, which is red, which means that if I do anything here, if I increase or reduce the brightness or add contrast or whatever, notice that we're only controlling the red section of the image, so it looks red. And if you look at here the scopes, we're only controlling the red channel. It's as simple as that. So the splitter splits these channels. So let's reset again, bring the node here, right click, add node, splitter, and this is the splitter node. It simply splits the image. So let's connect this here. And now if let's add three new nodes. So add node corrector, and add node corrector. Great. So 1, 2, 3, and now the first output will be the red channel, will send only the red, this one will send only the green, and this one will send only the blue. So now if we control any of these nodes, it will only control that channel. So for example, let's connect the red one to the output. And again, now we can only see the red channel, of course in black and white, because it's a channel, it's not an image. So in order to make that more clear, I will remove this connector. And how can I combine these? We cannot use a standard combiner like the one we used a bit earlier. We have to use something that will combine the channels. And that's where the second node, so add node, the combiner node comes in, where it allows us to basically connect these nodes, send them to the output, and now nothing changed, because what happened is that this is the original image. Here we split it into red, green, and blue, and then we combine them back here into one image that is an RGB image and send them to the output. It's as simple as that. However, if I select this node, so the one that controls red, notice that it only controls red. And if I click this one, notice the green here. No matter what we do, we're only controlling the green channel. And again, this one is for the blue channel. And this allows us to achieve very nice effects they can be achieved in many other ways, but this makes the effects easier and simpler. For example, just let's add contrast to the original image before we send anything. And now select the first one, so the green one, and add contrast, and notice the cross-process look you're starting to get. Let's also click here on this one, the blue one, reduce contrast a bit, and take a look at the image. This looks kind of different, kind of artistic because of these nodes. And of course, this node does not need to send to the output directly. I mean, we can add another node here, add node corrector, and we can send it to continue working on the image from here. And this will just receive the 3 channels. Of course, we can also mix and match the channels, but that's a topic for a different day. We're simply discussing nodes here. Let's reset. Drag this here, right click, add a node, and here we just discussed all the nodes. So again, let's reset, drag this node here, and now if you right click, go to add node, we discussed all the different types of nodes. However, note that there is one more node here that we did not discuss. The shared node. What is a shared node? Initially, when you start your project, there will be no node called the shared node. This is a node that you create. So you can only see this node here because I created it like a while ago. But let's take a look at shared nodes. So I have this node here. I'll just correct the image a bit, add a new node, and then I'll add maybe a third node. Great. Now I will select the node in the middle, right click, and there's an option here that says save as shared node. And now this node is a shared node and it has a name, shared node 2, and we can right click, change the label from shared node 2, for example, let's call it node B. So this node now can be added to other clips. Let's open the clips panel again, and now let's change the color of the shared node. But notice that no matter what I do, I cannot change the color of the shared node. It doesn't affect the image in any way. Well, that's because by default, when you create a shared node or add a shared node, it's locked. Note this locked icon. So we have to unlock this node. This is just to prevent you from adding effects by mistake that you did not want to add to your image. So I'll right click and I'm just going to uncheck lock node, and now this is the node unlocked. And now let's maybe make the image really red in this node. Now I will jump now to a different clip. So this clip does not have that node, and now when I go to right click, add node, I have this option that is called B at the bottom. So this is the name of the shared node that I just created. If I add it here, notice that the image now looks red or orange in this case because it has the shared node. And the shared node is actually live. So for example, I can right click, unlock the node, and now change the color to blue. And notice that this node is affecting all clips on the timeline that have this node the same way. So I can come to this clip here, again, right click, add node B, and the image is blue again because they all have the shared node. So great, these are the different types of nodes. Now let's take a look at a way to manage the situation where you have a lot of nodes on your timeline. And well, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to reset this, maybe add, let's bring this here, add like nodes, maybe add a parallel node here, whatever. Let's say that you have a lot of nodes on your timeline and you want to manage things in a better way. You can simply select these 2 nodes in the middle, for example, right click and select create compound node. And now these two nodes are in a folder. Notice that the design of this node is a bit different because this is a node that contains other nodes inside of it. And you can, of course, rename this node. And if we double click on the node, now we opened this node and we can only see the nodes that are inside this compound node. And note that even at the bottom here to the bottom left, we have breadcrumbs that shows us where are we exactly. So this is the name of the project and this is the name of the node. So just by looking here, you can easily tell that you're now inside the compound node and this is not the main node structure. And to get out of this to the main node structure, I can simply double click on the breadcrumbs on the project name and now I'm out to the main nodes, and I can decompose this node, which is basically just getting the nodes back to the main structure by right-clicking and clicking decompose compound nodes. And this is all clear and we got the nodes. However, there is a big, and I do mean a big caveat here. There's something that you need to, whenever you use compound nodes, there's something you need to be very, very aware of. Let's go back to the compound nodes. So for example, I'll just add a couple of more nodes here. So we have all of these nodes. It's a messy system. I'll select all of them, create a compound node. Great. And now I can open this compound node, maybe work on this node, for example, add contrast and like change the image in one way or another. Great. Let's go back to the main node structure. Weirdly enough, what can happen here is that even though this is a folder, so even though this contains nodes, it is a node by itself. So if, for example, I'm selecting the compound node and I make the image again, change the colors of the image in any way, shape, or form, like add contrast, do anything to the image that makes it, changes the look of the image, this folder actually contains nodes. So this folder is actually affecting the image, which simply means that if I right-click and select Decompose Compound Node, we lost all the changes that we added to the folder itself. And this is a big deal because it happened to me a lot. Like you add a compound node and you're working and you just select the compound node, change the colors in one way or another. And if you decide at any point to decompose the compound node, you lost all the changes that were saved into the node, which is at the same time a node and a folder. Yeah, let's reset. Next, let's take a look at the options of a single node. So for example, I can right-click on the node where you have many options. So you can reset node grades, so resetting the colors of this particular node. There is the node label, changing the name, node color to easily reference the node. You can click here and now this line looks orange. So we change the color of the node. You can lock the node if you don't want any changes. So once you click here, you have this lock icon. Let's remove that. And then you can add a node that comes right after this node. So the difference between clicking here on the node area itself, so not on a particular node, and click add node, is that the node is added to the node structure and you can, for example, drag it on top of a line in order to add it. So to connect it to this line, notice that when I drag it on top of this line, the line becomes yellow, and once I release the mouse button, it's automatically connected in this path. Right click. However, if you click on add a node here, so let's delete this node and right click on the node itself and go to add node and add serial, it will automatically be connected to this node. It's as simple as that. Then right click, we have save as a shared node. We've already seen this before. You can delete a shared node. You can delete the node. Then you have the HDR mode. For HDR grading, we're not going to get into that, but basically changes the mapping of the controls here to be better suited for HDR content. So let's reset, remove HDR. Next, you have node cache. We're not going to get into playback here, but this is simply for when you add some effects, like, for example, denoising that are pretty heavy, and you add the effect to a particular node, you can pre-render the content of this node. So you're not rendering the clip, you're not pre-rendering the timeline, you're only pre-rendering this particular node, which helps with playback. So that's basically what node cache is. Then you can add a LUT to a node from the LUTs that you have in your system. Then you can change the color space that this node operates in. We're not going to get into that now, but if you don't change these settings for the node will be taken from the project settings. So it will use the color space and the gamma settings for the project. Next, you have channels. We've already seen this feature. We took a look at this feature. So red, green, and blue, enabling or disabling the system. Then you have the add mat option, where you can use an external file to add a key to a node. So instead of you adding a key to a node manually, the key will be coming from an external file. For the most part, you're not going to be using this. And finally, you have the composite mode for this node, where you can change the composite mode. That's pretty self-explanatory. So for example, let's switch this to overlay, and now you have overlay mode applied to the node, and kind of looks nice. It changes the colors a bit. Then to the top right of the node structure, if we click here, we have the option to show or hide thumbnails. So if you want to work with a lot of nodes without seeing the thumbnails, you can just click here, and the node will just be a node without the thumbnails. Show thumbnails, and then you have the option to disable thumbnail refresh during playback. This will help with smooth playback. If you're facing any trouble with playback, you can disable the refresh during playback. Then the final thing that we need to talk about is that each node has this part at the bottom that tells you what effects are added to this node. Note that this area is empty now. However, if I change the primaries, note that we have this icon telling you that this node has a primaries effect applied to it. And if we use curves, that's a different icon. And most of these effects have their own icons, to tell you what kind of effects are basically added to this node. So I just added some tracking, and note these icons here that tells us what kind of effects are added to this node. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was a good introduction to nodes. It will help you at least understand how nodes work, what do they do, and how to deal with them in DaVinci Resolve. Again, please, if you're interested, help us by filling the survey that you have a link in the description to the survey. And if you like this, please visit us at filmsimplified.com, where you can join our free DaVinci Resolve crash course that is designed for the absolute beginner and will take you through every tab in Resolve. Thank you.
Filmsimplified.com